Welcome to Office Hours with our famous Kim Vopni, who's joining us every month now. I'm so excited. Hi, Kim.
Hi, how are you?
Thanks for doing this. We're mixing it up a little bit today. Normally you're on here by yourself and I'm like behind the keyboard just trying to capture all the amazing things that you say. But today we want to do a couple of things. One is I want to tell you about my own personal experience with Lacey Forsyth, who we both know, who's a pelvic floor physiotherapist in Port Moody. And I want to tell you about an exciting announcement that we're working on for March 8th. So yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, so thanks for taking the time to do this. I think right off the top, you know I'm going to be issuing a challenge to all menopause chicks to see a pelvic floor physio at least once this year. Yeah. So can you please share with us how one would go about that? Where can we find a pelvic floor physio?
So I used to direct people to my page, and I will do that again, but I recently transitioned to a new website and I haven't quite got that page back up yet. So in the meantime, you can simply Google your city and pelvic floor or pelvic floor physio, and that's a way to find at least some people to check out. Pelvicguru.com is a friend and colleague of mine, and she has now it's becoming quite a global directory, which mine was as well, but hers is a bit more comprehensive. So you can definitely check out pelvicguru.com. In Canada, you can go to the Canadian Physiotherapy Association site, and you can search based on the like women's health. Same thing in the US for the American Physical Therapy Association. And also in Canada, there's pelvichealthsolutions.ca that also has a listing. So none of them have every single person, and I don't know if ever that will be, but it's becoming a more common search. So a lot more physiotherapy clinics are listing pelvic floor, but just make sure, one caveat I would say is when you call in, so if you find a place that's close to you or in your city, when you call in, just double check and make sure that the therapist who is listed as treating incontinence or pelvic floor dysfunction is actually licensed and rostered with their either provincial or national body, so that they are licensed to go beyond the introitus. Because there are some non-internal pelvic floor, like I would be a non-internal pelvic floor person. I don't call myself a physiotherapist or a therapist, but there are some non-internal physiotherapists who are doing similar work to myself who would not be licensed to do an internal. So just double check that they have that training and that license.
Okay, that's amazing. So we will put those website addresses in the comments below. And I think too, what's happening, in my Menopause Chicks group, in your Box Talk group, there's more and more conversation happening about this too. So ask a friend, right? Ask someone in your community, have you heard, can you recommend someone? I think that's a great way to meet the professionals.
Yeah, and I get questions a lot. So people, who would you recommend in X city? And so people, if I don't know somebody there, then I also am part of a women's health physiotherapy group. And if there's somebody, somebody will say in Germany or wherever it is, and I don't know people there, but I can reach out and say, who would you recommend? So I know that they're kind of,
that's cool.
They're vetted through that group as well too. So reach out to me if you have a question, you can't find anybody, let me know.
Amazing, amazing. Okay, so I did something in January that was a little bit out there for me. One was I had to admit to you that I had never been to a pelvic floor physiotherapist. So I've gone public. Then I booked the appointment. Lacey was amazing. She allowed me to record the appointment. So nothing R-rated, don't worry. It was just basically I wanted to share with all of Menopause Chicks how easy, how comfortable it was, and more importantly, like what some of the questions, what the experience would be like. So we did that. We're going to be putting it up on a site, and in conjunction with March 8th, which is International Women's Day, we're going to be announcing the next recipients from the Mokita Fund for Women.
So good.
And the Mokita Fund for Women, if you don't know, is it's like a bursary fund that we've put together so women who are perhaps challenged by financial resources, or they don't have, you know, great extended health benefits, they can, it's not an application, they can just put their name on our guest list. And as the fund grows, as we get enough resources there, then we are going through the list and we're saying who needs what now. And pelvic floor physio comes up a lot for the women that have already signed up. And so we want to give them a gift certificate and say, here, go and do it. So we have 2 names that are going to be announced on March 8th. And in conjunction with that, I do want to challenge everyone in the Menopause Chicks community to make an appointment for at least 1, maybe 2 sessions this year. It's one way to put your own health at the top of your to-do list. So in order to do that, I had to do it myself. And you know, it was a great experience, as you'll see when I show the videos, but I learned a lot too. So a couple things that I learned. I have a stage 2, maybe stage 3 bladder prolapse and rectocele, which honestly, I'd never even heard that word until I heard you use it too. So I would love to know, I mean, Lacey gave me some homework. She was very thorough. She, you know, described what I should be doing, but in all honesty, I haven't quite made the leap to this being a part of my routine. And I know that, you know, many professionals like yourself would say, well, just do it, Shirley. But the truth is, I'm not doing it. So how would you help me? Do you have any recommendations to help me?
Yeah. So first of all, I love that you went, and I love the fact that you have incorporated this in such a huge way in Menopause Chicks, and that you are gifting this because it is so needed. And really, our government in an ideal world should be paying for this. It really should be something that's covered, but unfortunately it's not. And resources like what you're providing are amazing. So thank you for doing that. So a couple things. I always ask first, what are your goals? So you have this new knowledge, and you are like, it was news to you really, because you don't have any symptoms that would have said that something's not right. Yeah.
I didn't have any symptoms. I have fear in that, you know, my mom did have bladder repair surgery in around her mid 60s, but we never talked about it. So that's always been on the back of my mind. I had 2 vaginal deliveries and lots of stitches, and one of them was a vacuum delivery. I knew that going in. And as I may have explained to you in the past, I think I felt a prolapse at one point in my life, got really, really scared, pushed it back in, tried to, you know, really focus on the free resources that you had on your website and follow your advice. But life happens, you kind of get relaxed and a little bit lazy around that. And so this is, my goal is actually to make myself accountable so that I don't have to have surgery one day.
Yeah, awesome. And that's a huge thing for a lot of people. So either they know their mom had it, or they know some of their friends have had surgery and they really want to be able to avoid that. Or some people want to reduce symptoms, or some people want to improve the stage of their prolapse. Some people, there's lots of different goals. There's lots of different things that motivate people for change. So the accountability piece. So I always say that pelvic floor exercise is very effective if you do it correctly, consistently, and coordinated with movement. And the correctly part is, you can learn from somebody like me with the visualizations that I have. The gold standard is obviously to have seen a pelvic floor physio, which you've done. So I'm assuming Lacey assessed your ability to contract and relax your pelvic floor, and they do that with their fingers, 1 or 2 fingers inserted.
Correct. And I was not as good as I thought I was.
Okay. So, but you now have come away with that knowledge of how you should be doing it.
Yes.
So that's awesome. You've got the correctly down pat. Now you need to implement and make it a consistent pattern. And then you need to coordinate it with movement in an ideal world. So step one is to how can you make this a consistent part of your life? So like our business, like our life, we have calendars, we have things to do, we prioritize, we what have you. And you are very well one of those people who talks about, we have to prioritize ourselves. We have to put ourselves at the top of the list. So you need to do the same thing basically, and schedule it. So whether you just put it into your day with a sticker on a physical calendar or a pop up on your Google Calendar, sticky notes around your desk, your computer, what have you. And just it could be just a little check-in on your computer that just says, how are you holding your pelvis? That's all it has to say. And it's just every time you look at it, it's just a reminder to, I'm here. I need to switch the position of my pelvis.
Yes.
So just little bits.
Before video, actually, I think I sit taller when I'm doing video.
Of course you do. No, but it's an awareness piece, and part of what happens is it's creating a new habit, it's creating a new awareness, and it doesn't happen overnight. But the more that we see that note and adjust our posture, the less we actually are out of it. And over time, our body is now adapting to this new place that actually feels really good, and it feels better. It really does. A lot of tailbone pain, back pain, incontinence, prolapse, all the symptoms associated with it, or the development of it, is often triggered to how we're sitting or standing through the day. So write yourself a little sticky note, put wherever you need to have reminders. That will definitely help you. And then you have to ideally start small. The biggest thing with, rather than saying, I have to do 10 minutes of pelvic floor exercise every single day, say, whether it's the posture one or whether it's 30 seconds, I'm going to do a Kegel exercise for 30 seconds today, and write another little sticky note on your computer and say, it's just 30 seconds. That's it, 30 seconds. And start to, the more you do the 30 seconds, you're going to recognize it's so easy. And then you're like, well, I'm doing 30 seconds. I might as well make it a minute. I might as well, you know what I mean? So you just you start small rather than creating this big, a big change that is sometimes harder to implement. Start small, start with 30 seconds, do one little thing.
That's
one thing.
Really good.
Because there was a book that I read called Atomic Habits, and he makes a point in there saying everybody, winners and losers, start with the same goal. Everybody starts with the same goal. They want to win the race, or they want to accomplish something. So everybody has the same end goal they're working towards. Some people, if you're in a race, one person's going to win, and there's going to be people that don't win. They all go into it with the same drive, the same motivation, but it's all of the little steps, the little systems that have brought that winner to be the one that achieves the goal. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So it's taking, ultimately what you want is to avoid surgery.
Right.
So rather than saying, I have to totally change my life so that I don't have to have surgery down the road, it's all the little things that over time they start to add up into these incremental huge change that accomplishes the goal of avoiding surgery, rather than doing everything you need to change right now. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I love that. Yeah. I think you and I were at an event a couple of weeks ago, and I got a few laughs when I did this.
Yeah.
You remember? Yeah. But it's like, I have to stop crossing my fingers and hoping for the best.
Yeah.
And dialing that back to small things every day, so that there is a strategy besides hope.
Yeah, totally. Right? You're crossing the finger strategy or crossing the leg strategy when you think about incontinence and leaking is, sorry, there's a big loud train squealing by. I don't know if you can hear it.
I hear it.
It's really loud on this side. Yeah, it's not an effective strategy, but there are little things that we can be doing that can make, over time, like people say, well, what's 30 seconds a day going to do? Not much immediately, but that's going to lead you to wanting to do a little bit more. And over time, it's the compounding effect that will build on that and will make significant change down the road. Everybody wants that like momentous, huge change overnight, which not many things do that really at the end of the day.
I have one, actually. What? Yeah, Lacey taught me that when you sneeze, just in that split second, as you're maybe like lifting your arm to cover your mouth or whatever, that's when you do a Kegel.
Yes.
Yeah. And I was like, that's amazing. I've practiced that for the last few weeks.
Okay, perfect. So that's, yeah, it's called the knack, and it's essentially a pre-contraction of when you, like when you're going to lift something really heavy, or if you can, just before you cough or sneeze, then you can kind of get it engaged, essentially. Yeah, totally.
It's brilliant. Try that. So just before you sneeze, do a proper Kegel if you watch Kim's YouTube videos, and no leakage.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's one little thing that you have made a change. You haven't done anything else. You've already implemented one small change. And just by doing that more frequently, you're bringing in a bit of pelvic floor activation. It's a reminder. It's going to reduce the leaks. It helps increase confidence over time. So now it's just, put a posture.
Cool.
Point on your computer. Yeah.
So my homework, in addition to doing proper Kegels and regular pelvic floor exercises, I have quite a bit of scar tissue. Mm-hmm. So the other piece of my homework is massage, perineal massage. Am I saying that right?
Yep.
And then the third part was child's pose, which I'm like back to the mat. And I absolutely love that piece. But I'll be honest with you, the massage piece, I haven't been practicing. Yeah.
Yeah. It can be a little bit, it's, first of all, having gone to a physio is a big step for a lot of people. And then not everybody has even been comfortable with touching themselves or exploring or potentially even using a mirror. And so it can feel a little bit awkward or weird or uncertain. So it's something you can do with your fingers. So I'm sure she showed you how to do it yourself, but there's also some tools that you can use that can make it a bit more accessible.
Okay.
There's one I used to sell when I had my e-commerce store. There was one I used to sell called the TheraWand, which I don't have here anymore, but you can, if you go to TheraWand's website, they have them, and they are silicone. They're usually kind of like an S shape.
Okay.
And what they do, there's different, the two ends are slightly different. So one's a bit more kind of not complete, don't think pointed like as in the top of a pencil, but it's got a bit of a drawing, like a point, more of a point on here, and the other one would be rounder. So the pointy one, obviously that gets into a more specific area, and the rounder end is a bit more global, which can be a bit more comfortable depending on what sort of trigger points you have or where the scar tissue is. Okay. There's also a new one on the market that's in Canada called the Kegel Release Curve, and it is actually, oh no, I don't have it here. They sent me one. I'm just looking to see, maybe I do have it. I don't think I do. I think it's at my house, but it's stainless steel. It has it's quite comfortable. It's a bit larger than the silicone ones. I haven't actually used it, like I haven't inserted it and tried it myself yet, but it's lovely. It's a really easy to use product. So one of those can sometimes make the thought of trying to go and release scar tissue a little bit more accessible to people if you have something that's touching for you to start out with. You can also, a partner can do it for you too, but again, not everybody's comfortable with that. Not every partner is comfortable with that.
Right.
So yeah, so I recommend, I'm not sure what Lacey said from an oil or lubrication perspective, but castor oil can be a really good oil to use in terms of releasing adhesions and scar tissue.
Oh, okay.
So that's something that you could give a try to. And there's lots of other benefits to castor oil too, which we won't get into, but I love it for that stuff in terms of releasing scar tissue. So did she recommend that daily or how often?
I can't remember. I can't remember. There's two sides of my head right now. One side is like Shirley that really needs to prioritize her own health and get focused and serious about this. And not that the other side isn't serious, but the other side of me is saying, oh, don't forget to remind women that it's never too late. Because, my daughter's 16. I gave birth 16 and 19 years ago. Yep. And the scar tissue can still be manipulated and improved upon, right? Do you want to speak to that?
Totally. Yeah. And that's actually for myself as well. So I have two children, both vaginal births, and I had used a device, like a pelvic floor trainer, basically, that helps with learning to contract and relax, but it also helps with perineal massage in preparation for birth. And so my goal was to not have any tearing, and I didn't have any external tearing, but in my head at the time, I didn't even think about the fact that you could have internal tearing and trauma. And so I was like, oh, well, I didn't tear. That's awesome. Great, move on. And then when I learned about pelvic floor physio, so it was about 3-ish years, maybe 4 years after my second was born. So that's like, so that's 8 years ago, 9 years ago. And so when I went, I realized I have internal scarring, and right where my rectocele, so where my rectum bulges into the back part of my vaginal wall, that's exactly where the scar tissue is. So that created sort of a weakness in that area. And every time I see my physio, I usually go once or twice a year. And, it's not something that just like, oh, if you release it, you're good for the rest. It's kind of always a piece or a part that benefits from manipulation and from some massage and some manual work. So that's often what she does, is she just kind of helps get it more supple again. And it's amazing how she always says, do your Kegel at the beginning. And then after she's done the manual therapy piece, she'll ask me to do it again. And, and she's always like, oh yeah, like she gets all excited about it. But even myself, like I can feel a significant difference in my ability to, more so in how kind of high I feel that I can lift. Not so much in my early contraction, but the depth of it maybe is a better term. So so that's not saying, I don't think it's something that you would need to do every single day, but maybe once a week, maybe twice a month, and go back and see what Lacey had suggested. But yeah, you have to kind of stay on top, because scar tissue creates adhesions, which is part of the natural healing process. But those adhesions can interfere with the muscle's ability to contract and relax in a balanced way.
Right.
So if it's there and it's kind of pulling more on one side, then that can mean that our pelvic floor is kind of, or maybe one side is stuck, and we have to let that go. And then we do our retraining exercises. So yes, we have to prioritize. And the other thing that I say on that is all of the other tasks or responsibilities, relationships, all of the other things that are on our to-do or that are part of our life, they become easier when we have taken care of ourselves. And especially the pelvic floor, because it's so central to sex. It's central to confidence within our body. It's central to pain. Like sometimes if we have pain in our pelvis, it's always there. It's always here. And it's getting in the way of us living our fullest life. It's getting in the way of us being able to be fully focused on our work or on our partner or on our children or whatever it is. So yes, I say just do it, but we have to, I think it's appreciating the all of the ways that non-optimal pelvic floor function can interfere with so many aspects of our life, and how when we can address that, all of a sudden we don't think about it. It's not chronically like, oh my God, thinking am I gonna leak? Can I make it to the bathroom? Do I smell? Does he notice? Is it, you know what I mean? All of those things, it becomes less, and we have more freedom in our life. So.
Okay. So you just said like two golden words for me: confidence and freedom.
Yeah.
Because I just love to talk about words and language, and I'm a huge advocate for changing this conversation. Yep. So the more that we can introduce ways to feel more confident and to feel free to live our best midlives, the better. It's amazing.
Yeah.
And I could talk about that all day, but I need to bring us back, because you said another word that's brand new to me, and that was rectocele.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I have a rectocele. So I'm going to use my sweater vagina.
Okay.
I'll sit over here.
I noticed you were wearing that for a reason.
pretend this is a vagina.
Okay.
And we have if we still have our uterus, we have our uterus and our cervix on top. And this is the anterior wall of the vagina. This is the posterior wall of the vagina. Bladder would be here, rectum back here. And rectocele is one form of organ prolapse, pelvic organ prolapse. And cele, whenever you hear cele at the end of something, it typically means that it's bulging into the vagina.
Okay.
So in a rectocele, the rectum bulges into the posterior vaginal wall. So there's some weakness in the vaginal wall that allows that organ to start to protrude into. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And in a bladder prolapse, also called a cystocele, there would be a weakness on the front wall or anterior wall, and that would allow the bladder to start to protrude. In uterine prolapse, because it's actually not bulging into the walls of the vagina, it's actually descending into the vagina. Most people call it just a uterine prolapse or a uterus prolapse. Some people may also hear the term anterior wall prolapse, which usually indicates, again, the bladder, or a posterior wall prolapse, which again usually indicates the rectum. While a cystocele can be called also a bladder prolapse, a rectocele is not also called a rectal prolapse. And the reason is because we can also have the rectum can bulge out of the anus, and that can actually happen in men or women. So you wouldn't hear, if you have a rectal prolapse, that's different from a rectocele.
Okay.
Okay, so I have a rectocele, and my rectum bulges into the posterior wall. Stage 2, so the way that they grade is usually by how far away it is from the introitus, or the entrance to the vagina. So a stage 1 it's like a tiny little bulge. It's not really, you don't really see much. A stage 2, when they look, they would see a bulge either on the anterior wall or the posterior wall, and it would be generally kind of accepted distance-ish is 2 centimeters away from the entrance to the vagina. Stage 3 would be where it's at the entrance, so you can either see or feel a bulge. And then a stage 4 would be where it's actually right out. And that would be, so if you're looking this way, if you look at pictures, and I don't always encourage women to look at prolapse pictures on the internet because it can be really quite scary.
Yeah.
But it kind of it's like having a scrotum in a way. You have this kind of pouch, this outpouching, and it's the way you decipher it. If it's the posterior wall, when you're looking into the vagina, you would see that bulge closer to the back part. And if it was a bladder, it would be up here. And if it's a uterus, you would actually, if you still have your uterus and cervix, you would see a little, almost like an invagination, kind of like a little dent almost to identify the cervix. So that's how it would be distinguished between. And like you, so I did have some symptoms early on. I don't have them anymore, but my stage is pretty much the same. Rectoceles of the 3 types, so of bladder, uterus, and rectum, rectoceles they're harder to improve. You can maintain what you have, but they are more difficult to improve or potentially reverse. So early stage bladder and uterine prolapse, if you catch it at kind of a stage 1 or 2, I know many people who have improved and many people who have completely reversed that. Whereas rectoceles, most rectoceles pretty much stay where they are, but symptoms can definitely improve. So yeah, so symptoms are not indicative of the stage of a prolapse. Somebody could have a stage 1 and have so many symptoms, and just they're all they think about is that. They can feel it, they know it's there, it's affecting absolutely everything. Or people like yourself and like myself can have a stage 2, stage 3, and they're like, I had no idea. I had no idea. So
wow.
yep.
Okay, so I know you've done a lot of content on this on your own page and even in the Menopause Chicks community about improvements through your diet and so on. So you don't have to go into that today, but what are sort of the takeaways for managing it if that's the best case scenario?
Yeah. So managing a rectocele, a lot of it comes down to elimination, because when you have that kind of little bulge, you can get poop trapped in there.
Mm-hmm.
And if you get poop trapped in there and it's harder to get out, then you either strain to get it out, or if it gets stuck and starts to get dried and you're not eliminating every day, then you're constipated, and then it strains more, and there's, you're not eliminating all the toxin, all that kind of stuff. So pooping is like, you got to pay attention to your digestion and your poop for sure. That's the biggest thing, especially since you have another organ that's prolapsing. So if you are ever straining on the toilet or in kind of collaboration with your rectocele, it's not always just because the rectocele that you may not be eliminating correctly, or optimally, but if there's ever any straining, that's also putting more pressure down on the other one. So it could potentially lead to that other one, or even the development of a third, the uterus as well. So you really have to stay on top of eating, drinking lots of water, paying attention to your posture through the day, and making sure, so if you don't already, use a squatty potty. And fiber is your best friend. Like, the recommendations are usually 25, actually it's a little bit higher, so say like 28 to 35 grams of fiber for women. At least 35, like if not 35 to 45 grams of fiber, blend between insoluble and soluble. So we need the soluble, we need the bulk, but we also need the softness. You need to have a blend between the two. And sometimes it's a bit of trial and error to see which ones are best. Some people benefit from a fiber supplement. And if you do that, really make sure you drink a lot of water, because otherwise that fiber supplement can sometimes get it too impacted, and then it's harder to pass again. If you ever, I don't love regular use of a stool softener, but if you ever have a day where you haven't gone, then I do recommend a stool softener for the next, so that you eliminate the need to strain the next day. Yeah, so managing rectoceles it really comes down a lot to what you eat, what goes in and what comes out. And how often, and that can then dictate the support of the other ones as well. The other organs, rectoceles are harder to support with a pessary. So a pessary is like it's a device that goes in and sort of opens up and can provide support. Rectoceles are more difficult to support with a pessary, but bladder and uterus can be. So that could be something that you might want to look at too. But and then pelvic floor exercise. And sometimes people who have a rectocele benefit from, well, actually, there was a study that showed anally driven cues. So cues that involve the anus more, or people using their anus more to activate the pelvic floor, is a bit more beneficial. So I say it still is dependent on the person and what response it elicits. But if you kind of think about closing the anus off and then potentially the urethra and then a lift, sometimes that can be a bit more beneficial, like paying more attention to the back wall.
Okay.
So yeah, so digestion for sure. And ideally, this might, like, a lot of people are alarmed by this, but the amount of poop that should come out of us in a day is basically from our elbow to our wrist. Crazy. Like, people are like, oh my God. But and then people, like, sometimes when I don't actually put my arm in it, but I'm like, yeah, it's about this. Okay, that's good. So, but that should come out at 1 to 3 times of a day is considered normal. And if that amount comes out in those 1 or 3 times, then that would be good. And we're aiming for a 3 to 4 on the Bristol stool chart. So kind of like a big long log, ideally fairly smooth or with a couple of little cracks, but we don't want little rabbit pellets. Obviously not too loose, and we don't want really hard stuck stool. So we kind of want that nice big long log in an ideal world. And then you have a poogasm, and everybody wants a poogasm. So.
Okay, so I love you because I always learn something new, and now I get to tell my family tonight when they get home about the
Yeah.
armor.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
You're always giving me, when they say, what did you learn today?
Well,
I
let me
have an answer. Um, thank you. Thank you. Okay. So what else do we want to share with people today? We want to share with people, with women that are watching this who are maybe like me and are looking for the reminders and the accountability, right? To
Yeah.
reach our goals. You've got some tools, you've got some programs for us. What are they?
Yeah, so I had created an online program called Kegelmojo, which, it kind of brought in all of my education, like stuff that we've just talked about here, everything that I teach women when I work with them one-on-one. It had like a huge exercise library, videos and photos. I some printable workouts and some guest experts, and it was kind of like this comprehensive thing. But what I found was women were a bit overwhelmed by it, and they're kind of like, okay, it's a lot, but I'm not quite sure, where do I start, and do I have to build my own workouts after this? So I broke it down into an app version, basically, that it doesn't have everything that's in the program. It has the exercise, well, most of the exercises, and it's on an app, so you get daily reminders, and it gives you a list of 5 things to do. And when you check them off, you get a satisfying, green check mark and a little ding that says you've done it, and you collect points. So it kind of brought in the gamification and the reward system that helps instill good habits.
Everybody loves a good pelvic floor game.
Yes, yes, they do. Yeah, so, but they really do. So what was happening was like, oh my God, this is exactly what I need. It reminds me, I know exactly, you tell me what to do, I check it off, I get this sense of accomplishment because I've taken my 5 minutes or 10 minutes and it's done and checked off my list. And then that same thing is going to happen tomorrow. And it's over 28 days. And so the intention behind it is to start to, people start to pattern them. They wake up, either they do it before they get out of bed, or they do it just before they go to bed, or at some point in their day, they have a regular routine associated with it. So it starts to instill that habitual behavior. And the cool thing is, and it's, I guess I'm not that surprised because I know it works, but usually by day 14, people have either less or completely eliminated their symptoms, which is, it's like the power of consistency and doing things correctly, and also doing it with movement. So the app is not wake up and okay, now I open it up and now I sit at my desk and I do 50 squeezes and then I do another 50 more and then I do another 50. No, we're bringing it into movement. You're going to do squats and you'll do lunges and you'll do bridges and pelvic tilts and all sorts of different types of movements with your pelvic floor. So there's an introduction piece that tells you, posture wise and how to activate your pelvic floor. And then it teaches you how to bring it into movement. So that to me has been the most successful because it's financially accessible to pretty much everybody.
Okay.
Most everybody has a phone, and it takes care of the reminders and they tell me what to do every day piece, rather than sitting there and go, well, Kim, there was one exercise, then you have to log into your program and then you find it and you're like, you kind of lose them. So it's all right here, and it takes it. So that to me, from an accountability. Oh, and the other thing is there's a group chat on there. So you can ask me questions and I can give you modifications, or, if people are like, I don't know what you mean by this, I can address it, or they can ask other people. If somebody else has mentioned in the chat that they noticed this, or they've have this problem, and then they I have that too. And then you build up a sense of community there as well. So that to me is the most successful tool. I think I recommend everybody start there. And then if you want more, you can have the app on a monthly basis if you want, or you can go up to the full program, or you can work with me. Yeah, whatever you want to do. And the other thing that's in the full program, which we didn't talk about, I'll just mention, is hypopressives. Anybody who has prolapse, most of my clients anyway, but especially the ones who have prolapse, everybody gets hypopressives. They're super powerful, and that could make pretty significant improvements with your bladder.
And if you go to your Box Talk group on Facebook, you've got a great.
I have a few different videos in there, about teaching it, and for sure. Yeah.
Okay, so I started out this call by being vulnerable, by, confessing that I had never been to a pelvic floor physio. I can't say that anymore because I've been. And, and the other thing is I want to be your poster child for this app, because just hanging out with you and thinking that I knew you and knew what you were all about didn't actually, transpose by
Doesn't
osmosis.
work by osmosis.
Yeah, no, I actually have to do the work. But I'm happy to do that. So, it's the new year, and we're going to do some great things. If you weren't here at the top of the call, know that this conversation is part of a project that we're working on March 8th. We're going to have essentially a microsite that will be challenging all of Menopause Chicks to go see a pelvic floor physio this year, to put pelvic health at the top of their to-do list, to dial in to the work that Kim's doing. And we're going to be awarding 2 new recipients from the Mokita Fund for Women who don't have access to the financial resources or the health benefits to go see a pelvic floor physio this year. So really excited about 2020. Maybe we need to build in some gamification into that so everyone can get a gold star too.
Well, they do. Well, I was just thinking, like, we can do the next challenge starts March 3rd.
Oh, okay.
I have one running every month. So whether you want to do, like, we could do something with the group that they start on the March 3rd one, or do you want to wait until the April one after the March? It's up to you.
We don't want to wait. I only picked March 8th because it's International Women's Day. We'll just make the announcement that day, but let's get all the Menopause Chicks started on March 3rd.
Totally. Let's do that for sure. I'm gonna create a coupon code. I'll send it to you. You can post it in the group so that everybody can participate.
Amazing.
And like, that would be so awesome to have all of these Menopause Chicks community people on there doing it together. And then we check in onto the Facebook group. Like, I've done and I always encourage people to take your selfie.
Take a selfie with and they're already used to talking to each other about all these conversations. So that'll be amazing.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Okay, we didn't get a ton of questions today. Laura has a question about how to raise funds for the Mokita Fund, so I'll answer that after the call. But if you do have any questions, just put your comments below and either Kim or I will get back to you.
Yep, awesome.
And thanks for taking the time today.
Thank you for investing in your pelvic health.
Awesome. Have a good one.
You too. Bye.
Bye.